Aloha, everybody. Wow, the chat is going off already, isn't it? So let's come in and say hi to everybody. Jamie and, oh, who's this Malumir? Hi, Gerald and Scott and Deanne of Blue Crescent Tarot. Patrice, lovely Patrice. Jackie Jacaranda. Yay. Deck Harlot. Ooh. Hi, Lily. First time here? I don't recognize Deck Harlot as a name. Chris. Hello, Chris. And Betsy Palmer. Hello, my dear. And I think I reached the bottom of the chat. Hello to anyone I might have missed who's lurking. Today we have the beautiful Malumir Logan, and she is the creator of the Chakra Healing Tarot, if you've been living under a rock. And you've been on quite a few channels, haven't you, since this came out? And before.
Yeah, like I've had a few chats with folks. Though I think a lot of those were right around the time of the Kickstarters. So so it's nice to be on a chat again and talking all about it.
So I'm pulling out the deck.
Yes.
For those of you who don't have it, I mean, look at the inside of the box. I mean, that's just gorgeous. I love that. 2 scenes, right? And it's not a little white book. It's a chunky white book.
It's a chunky book.
Right. And I love how much just everything you put in here. I mean, you get the phrases and the chakra healing message. I love that you put in the chakras itself and the planetary energy. And it's like, there's not many decks out there you get a 200-page book with. So, especially this side.
Well, it was actually difficult to kind of cut down the content for the book because, I think some decks put a little bit more weight onto the majors, right? And so they might have more content in the book for the majors than the minors, but in my experience, that's not actually how tarot, tarot is so beautiful and complex and rich, and every single card is a universe unto itself. And so to me, the minors matter just as much as the majors. They're not an afterthought. And so that's why I put just as much effort and time and spent just as much real estate in the book on the minors as the majors.
I got to say, I really appreciate creators who do that, because there's also Ethany's Modern Love deck. She does the same thing. Each card gets a full workout. And people who have the 2-page thing for the major, and then all the 4s get a page.
Oh,
yeah. All the 4s are not the same. I mean, yeah, they have similar energies, but they're not the same thing. So why can't we get a little more depth, right? So I love that about your deck, and the fact that you have created several amazing spreads. Let's see, where are they? 4. Yeah, so got the Empowered Action spread, the Healing Wound spread.
Yes. And, that kind of speaks to the idea that sometimes we're faced with a choice that's, it's a hard choice, but, you're feeling ready for it. And so you just kind of want to figure out, okay, what's my best path forward through this? But then there's other times when you're struggling a bit more, you're dealing with something really hard. And in those cases, maybe you're not really feeling empowered, and maybe you actually need something that guides you through the healing process. And so that's why kind of the different approach to those spreads, while also trying to make them fit onto into a very this is a very tiny page to fit spread into.
Right.
So limitations.
As someone who has made my own spreads, I appreciate that deeply.
Yeah.
You made it really little.
It's so tiny. I create my own spreads all the time, and I usually have a lot more cards going on, but I physically can't fit more into this and still be legible.
Right. You can't squeeze it. Yeah. Oh, a couple more people popped in. Hi, Jada, and hello, Stephanie Burrows. Thank you for joining us. Yes, here we go. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? Because it was Ella Major who made the art for the deck. She's the amazing artist that I'm so glad was like said yes to the project, because I think a lot of because I mean I do create art, but I don't create art like this. I just wasn't going to be able to make the art look like it looked in my head, and she was able to make the art in real life looked like it looked in my head. And so when I was talking to her about this, because I really wanted to do a cute little thank you card, and so I sent her ideas. I'm like, I want it to be characters from the deck who are all kind of sitting there and saying, like gathered together kind of casually, like they're all friends and hanging out. There you go, saying thank you, giving a little love directly from the deck.
We all love love, don't we?
Funny though, because some folks, have removed it from the deck. They go, oh, that's so cute. I'll use it as a bookmark or something. And then other people have actually told me they're keeping it in the deck to use as a reminder for gratitude. And I thought, oh, that's such a lovely idea.
That's great. And it kind of goes, and it's the opposite of the shadow, right?
Right?
There you go, the shadow and the light in the deck. I love that. So what was the original thought behind creating this deck?
Yes. So, I've been fairly open about my own journey, and that it's, it hasn't always been easy. Like I've dealt with some, what someone wrote a comment about that at some point. I think they called it, that the creator has lived through some nervy trauma, to put it that way. I've lived through some really tough stuff. I have been through hell several times and back and through. And through that journey, I always had my spirituality. That's always something that really got me through. But beyond that, it was relearning to have a relationship with my body. And when I first discovered Reiki, and as I continued in my Reiki learning and practice through and education through to becoming a Reiki master, that really was a turning point for me, because I realized that so many of us actually become disconnected from our own bodies, which is terrible, because we're living in our bodies, right? We should be connected. We should feel fully connected to all parts of ourselves. And yet, so often in life, we go through things, go through difficulties. We disconnect from our body because it might be a painful place to be, which is neurologically natural, but we're not supposed to stay disconnected. Right. And then, the problem is that societally we're kind of encouraged to, it's okay to be only in your head. And then people can go for years not really being connected to their bodies. Meanwhile, the trauma is just kind of hanging out there and creating further issues in their bodies and their lives. And I firmly believe in people's ability to heal. Absolutely. People can heal they can heal their relationship with themselves, their energy bodies, and it all starts with connecting to ourselves. So that's why I wanted to create that, because I have a very deep and passionate love affair with the tarot. It means so much to me. And so I wanted to use tarot to help people connect with their bodies.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing, because as an acupuncturist, that's one of the main issues I've come up with people that I treat, is that they're completely out of touch with their body, and I ask them questions about their body and they don't have an answer for it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. The worst was this woman who came in with knee pain. I'm like, okay, well, what part of your knee hurts? What do you mean? Like, what, the outside, the inside, the interior, the back, the front? Like, what part of your knee hurts? Well, I don't know. My knee hurts.
Oh, no. Okay.
Who never could figure out where the pain was.
Oh, dear.
She was just disconnected. She just knew that her knee hurt, and that was all she knew.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and then I start asking her questions about her body, and she's completely disconnected.
And that's exactly what happens.
Body here.
That's exactly what happens. And it actually then, all accumulates and then creates even more compounded problems that people often don't realize until years later. And then it takes a lot to kind of get through each of those layers bit at a time to try to get back to yourself. Because really that's the goal, is just to get back to yourself.
which I appreciate in the Fool card because it's pretty much that's what it is, returning to yourself, right?
Yes.
And I love the rainbow volcano in the background.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a great card. And I noticed too that like as an example here, Three of Pentacles, like
Mhm.
they're building, but they're not building a building. What they're doing is they're gardening, which is I think that is so I mean, I love that interpretation of the Three of Coins because it's like that is what it is. I mean, you can't garden by yourself. You got to have people with you and watering and it's I don't know, I find it more profound than them building a building,
Mm.
right? Because they're like in touch with nature and you know
And how do you express yourself, right, within that kind of context, right?
exactly
Yeah.
like yeah. So I love that about this. And I also really appreciate how each of the minor I don't think I have enough pulled out, but how each of the minors have their own world that they live in, basically.
Yes. Yes, there are. So there are 5 kingdoms in the deck. The majors are on the sacred temple grounds at the top of the mountain.
Hmm.
So if you see the full card, or it's also kind of at the front of the box. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see a little bit of get a hint of each of the um, yeah. So right. So there's the top of the mountain, right, where the fool is standing.
Hmm.
There's the watery kingdom, which is where the chalices are. There's the
Right.
enchanted forest, which is where the pentacles are. Inside the base of the mountain is the caves where the wands are, and then of course in the clouds is where the swords are.
Mhm. Yeah, I noticed that when I was going through how like all the wands look like they're underground. And it was like that's what made me start looking at the others to be like, oh, okay. Pentacles are all in the woods. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I love how this Ten of Pentacles is not like the family unit. It's her herself just like embodying herself and just being part of
Yes.
nature, which I love.
Well, and it's funny because there have been, a couple of times people have been like, "Oh, that's that's a surprising take on that card. That's not what I would have expected." But I think I think sometimes, when it comes to, I mean, there's all different kind of schools of thought on tarot. Um, but it's like I said earlier, every single card is a full universe unto
Mhm.
itself, and particularly once you start diving into the Kabbalistic side of tarot, the meanings, they really kind of expand to beyond some of uh, those kind of go-to interpretations that we often have of cards. And it's not to diminish any way of reading cards, of course, right? Whatever way you read is right for you, and you should do that.
Mhm.
But the idea of this deck is, healing is not surface work, right? You kind of have to, and you don't go any deeper than you're comfortable with at any given
Mhm.
time, but you do at some point need to get through those layers. And so getting through those layers kind of requires stepping beyond some of the initial kinds of interpretations that we might automatically kind of reach for, reaching into that Kabbalistic perspective, which is why I took that approach in designing each of the cards.
Patrice says, Malumir, I so appreciate the depth of wisdom and compassion you bring to your deck and your readings. My Reiki journey is renewed by your deck,
Oh.
but I still have so much to learn from your deck.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, Patrice, that you've renewed your Reiki journey with the deck. That's so wonderful to hear.
That's amazing. Oh, and Gerald says, like Jamie said, you make every card important, which is one of the reasons I really love this deck. It's true. And then Stephanie Burrows says, I definitely love there's so many interpretations of the cards from
Yes.
different creators. Mhm.
Which makes sense. right? I mean, for deck creators, the actual term is you're authoring a deck, right? It's like authoring a book. And, I also have some ties to academia. And in academia, when you're writing a paper or you're writing something, one of the important things to do is to state what your bias is, because the idea is that no one doesn't have a bias, right? You always have a particular lens or a viewpoint. And when you're creating a deck or book or anything, it's really good to be clear on what it is that you're trying to create, right? You don't want to be all over the place. So the idea is that each deck creator comes to their deck from a specific lens or frame. And that's often why people will reach for different decks at different times. Like I have quite a number of decks, and I actually read with multiple decks usually at a time. And I'm always asking the same question to each deck, but I'm getting different perspectives on the same issue. And it's something I always recommend to people.
Yeah, it's a great idea. One of the things that I love about collecting decks is just the fact that it opens, like you said, each card is its own world. And seeing that world from different points of view, I think helps deepen our understanding of it. So that's one of the reasons why I personally collect decks, is just to help expand my knowledge.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that.
Yes, absolutely.
Deanne says, gently telling people that there was inside work to do, which I called tarot homework, is one of the hardest parts of being a reader. Just coming to the table to see the cards won't fix anything. Right. I think of it as a blueprint, telling you, like, let's take a step back, see the big picture, and see what actions you need to take right now. But you still have to take the actions. They're not going to take the action. They're not going to take themselves, right? They're not going to do it. So,
and in answer to an earlier question from Gerald, yes, I'd be happy to come on to a casual. Is that how you pronounce it?
Casual.
Casual.
I've been missing quite a few chats because I'm so enthralled with what you have to say. So one of the things I also noticed, as you said, the interpretations aren't always, let's throw back the Four of Wands again, which is like celebration, but you see it being a personal celebration instead of like a whole town celebrating, which I appreciate that, because it's like, it's less about like the full community and more about your personal heart chakra space. So
yes. And so much of our experience, not all of our experience, because the reality is there's often context that we can't control. It's outside of our context, other people, other places, other circumstances. But when we are coming from a heart space of readiness, when we have wherever we are in our heart space is often what ends up being possible around us, right? And so if we've reached a point where we within ourselves can truly love ourselves and celebrate something genuinely within ourselves, if we can do that, then you find, because you also notice where the wands are placed around her, right? The wands are placed in a very like equal kind of structure. There is still structure happening there, right? There's still the possibility of connection to others, but are you really connected with others if you're not actually connected with yourself first? Right. So that was the reason for that approach to the Four of Wands.
And then RuPaul pops in my head: if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else? Right.
Well, and there is definitely some truth to that.
Right. Well, which brings us back to that Ten of Pentacles thing, because it's like, yeah, it's great to be in your heart too, but you also got to be rooted.
Yes. And frankly, I think something that a lot of folks, particularly in the empath community, and I mean, the tarot community is not completely, but overwhelmingly has so many empaths. And I mean, I've gone through literally all of this stuff. I've experienced it, and still, I'm still working on things myself. That we often have struggled with feeling like we have enough, that we are enough, or that we even have the basic necessities in life, feeling secure, feeling safe, right? Feeling safe in life. So many people in this community actually don't. right? And so the idea of the root chakra and the 10 of Pentacles means that, you know, healing that part of you that can actually go about life feeling secure and grounded and safe in a very real way. There's something to be said for that, right? Because if you never feel safe in life, like if you can never feel some semblance of confidence, it's going to be very hard to actually make forward steps in your tangible life, like financially,
Right.
in terms of career and job. It's going to be difficult. And I've been there, right? I struggled for years not feeling safe. And I mean, there will always be limitations to how safe I can feel. I am a woman. So there will always be limitations to how safe I can feel. However, I am much more grounded and confident now than the very, you know, oppressed, beaten down person that I used to be. And with that increase in confidence, it meant that other things became possible in my tangible life that were never possible before, like career-wise.
Right. The other one I pulled out as far as the minors is this 10 of Swords. I have some other minors mixed in, but I mean, those are the ones that I pulled out because they're so different from what we're used to seeing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, you know, with the 10 of Swords, I think I don't have anything at all against, I mean, I don't have anything really against any deck. I love all decks. I love the variety of art and interpretations. For this deck, I think I wanted to make sure that there was nothing, like there's already, people are coming to this deck being triggered enough, right? And the whole point is it's a healing deck. And you know, I wanted to be mindful and careful of how I approached that. And so the idea is that, I mean, those swords are pretty darn close. Like the person kind of is entangled in them. They're not piercing the person, but this person is not in a safe or comfortable place right now. They're struggling, but they're also struggling against the difficulty, right? Like if you look at them, they're struggling and they're working hard to get back up. And, you know, and then you can see this stream of sunlight coming up through the clouds, pointing to the fact that there is hope, right? A new day is coming. They are going to be able to get on their feet.
Right. I love that. And it also kind of gives that vibe that you get when you're so stuck in your head that you're just like, you're stuck on that tiny little cloud. You can't get off.
Tiny little space.
Tiny little space, can't get out of it, can't move on. But
it feels like the end of everything. But it's not.
The cloud's going to disappear and I'm just going to fall. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do appreciate that about that card. Stephanie wants to thank you for doing that.
Oh, and I'm seeing a question from, yes. There we go. Yes. So, so in terms of the first question of how the chakras were assigned, so I do have actually a full blog post of that on my blog at acornandburdock.ca, but I'm happy to also provide a very brief explanation of that here. So I did take a Kabbalistic approach. So my approach in reading tarot includes a Kabbalistic perspective. And so part of the Kabbalah is the Tree of Life. And the Tree of Life has tarot correspondences to it, okay? So the Tree of Life, it has these, you can think of them as energy centers called Sephira. And each Sephirat also corresponds to a place on your body. Separately from that, of course, the chakras relate to our body as well. Now, there is not general, like there isn't one. Yes, thank you. That's the Tree of Life, and each of those circles is each Sephira, as I had mentioned. Yeah. And then you can see those pathways in between. So the tarot corresponds to each of those. And the Tree of Life corresponds to the human body. And that is something that, like in Kabbalistic circles, is well recognized. And so there does not exist at this point a generally accepted, known, or like there's no existing philosophy on how chakras and the tree of life combine. There's general awareness that, well, obviously they must, because they both correlate to the human body, but there is not an existing body of literature on assigning the two. And so what I did is that I assigned the two, right? Because I have worked closely with the tree of life, and I know how incredibly useful using tree of life correspondences is with reading tarot, and also the impact that it's had on my own healing journey to work with the tree of life. And similarly, the chakras, as a Reiki master, I work with those all the time. It's crucial, right? And so I'm like, it's a one body, so they are relating somehow. So what I did is I juxtaposed like the tree of life onto the chakras and assigned from there. It was a little bit difficult with some of them, and I talk about that in greater detail on my blog post. But I basically juxtaposed the tree of life onto the chakras and assigned them that way. In terms of how you use the cards, you know, the chakra healing message that comes up, I encourage you to sit with that and to journal with it when it comes up. Okay. So if you're pulling a card, and I do have, by the way, I encourage you to read the introduction to the guidebook. I know it's a little bit lengthy, but it does go into some detail and provide an introduction of how to work with them. But I think what's really useful to do is when you pull a card, look at it. You can read, but look at the card and notice where you feel it in your body, because I guarantee you, I seem to have frozen a bit. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you're back. Oh.
Are you able to hear me now?
We're having little hiccups.
There we go.
Yeah. The internet is having
oh dear.
Hiccups.
I am plugged into the Ethernet, so hello.
Hello.
Back, not quite yet. Hiccups.
You're like, you keep coming in and out.
Hello.
Problems. Hiccups. You're having hiccups. Internet hiccups.
Are you okay? Is everyone still able to hear me though? Is everyone able to hear me?
There you go. I think you're back.
Is anyone able to hear me?
I can hear you.
I will turn off my camera. Okay, you can hear me.
Jackie says we can hear you.
Okay, but I just I'll leave my video off for a minute or two, and I will turn my video back on in a moment or so.
Okay.
How does
that work? That sounds fun.
It looks like people can hear me. Okay, so I will do that. So I will turn my video back on in a moment once I'm fully back. But in the meantime, to continue to answer the question, what I recommend people do, look at it and notice where in your body you are feeling it. Oh, I'm seeing. Is everyone still able to? Okay, still having audio issues.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do, Jonathan, is I'm going to leave the studio and then I'm going to pop back.
Okay.
I'm going to leave and I'll come back in.
Don't worry, Chris. She'll be back. And yeah, we got the Chakra Dream Catcher over here. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to be up here. That and my son is here, and we are trying to get ready for a little staycation because it's his fall break. And so my husband got us a hotel room over on the west side of Maui. And we are going to go there tonight and tomorrow night and be back home on Thursday. So looking forward to that little staycation. There she is.
Hello.
Welcome back. Hello.
Hi. Now I'm freezing again. I'm plugged into the Ethernet. I don't know why it's doing that.
It probably has nothing to do with you. It's probably your area. Because I know we have that here.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Are you
Yeah, you're definitely
still
still
able
freezing.
to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You just freeze every so often.
Okay. Okay.
So
Fingers crossed. Okay, it seems to be knocking on wood.
yeah,
It seems
and
to
as the
mostly
tree
be back.
says,
So okay, so
yeah,
I'll re-engage with where I was. So because it is important, and and it's an important question that was asked. So
right.
when you pull a card, oh no, now it's freezing again.
There's the question again. Yeah.
Oh
No,
dear.
it's like you keep going and coming back, going and coming back. I guess just talk while you're here.
So frustrating.
It is, because this is important information. So, some people will say you're fine.
It is. Okay.
Yeah,
So you pull a card. I'm just going to keep talking.
just keep talking. We'll get
So
through it.
when you pull the card, just notice in your body where you feel it, because I guarantee that you are feeling it somewhere. Okay. And like if at first you don't notice, you're just pulling the card and you're looking at it and you're like, well, I don't get it, I don't feel it in my body. Just feel into your body. Like, look at the card, close your eyes, notice what you're feeling in your body. It may not be something that feels, it might not feel very big. It might just be something that's like a little bit tighter than usual, or maybe something feels like a very dull ache. Maybe something feels a little tenser than usual. Maybe something feels looser than usual, right? Just notice anything that you're feeling and notice where that is and let yourself feel it. Okay. That is a really important way of starting to work with your chakras, because you can dive right into the deep end of working with the chakras specifically, but what I recommend is first just get to be better connected with your body, right? So when you pull the card, you may or may not feel it in the chakras that are connected with the card. You probably do have a connection, but where you're feeling it might actually be somewhere else, because it's possible that the chakra challenges that you may have may actually be tied to another area of your body. And the deck may be showing you, here's where the core issue is, but it's possible you may have something else that you need to just develop a bit of a relationship with first, or just accept is there, right? Like, when your throat kind of feels tight, that's a throat chakra thing, right? That is your throat chakra. And so just just say, you can say to yourself, or even, out loud or quietly to yourself, thank you for speaking to me, right? Just thank your body for speaking to you. That is one really tangible way you can work with your chakras and this deck, is by just connecting with your body, seeing where you feel it when you look at a card, and just talk to that area of your body and thank it for talking to you. Hopefully you've heard all that. I seem to mostly be back.
Yeah, you're back. I heard everything you said, so hopefully it got recorded too.
Hopefully.
So one of the cards, speaking of, I've just been sitting here staring at this, so I wanted to pop in here. I love that it's a seahorse.
And that was very deliberate.
Yeah. That I have a soft spot in my heart for seahorses. So, and I live next to the ocean, so I really understand this, like the action of the waves and everything.
Yes.
I actually like, if I feel out of sorts myself, I'll actually go into the ocean and just start dancing with the waves, or doing qigong with the waves. So.
That sounds amazing. I wish I was close to an ocean. I'm nowhere close to an ocean. I'm close to Lake Ontario, but you don't want to go into Lake Ontario.
No. But you can find some cool agates are out there, I think. Is that right?
To find which?
Agates on the beach?
I don't actually know. I haven't found any like that. But again, I try not to go really into the water. Sometimes kayaking on one of the rivers is nice, but again, you don't really want to be in the water. It's better than it used to be. You used to be able to set the Don River on fire. You can't set it on fire anymore.
Well,
we've come a long way.
I'm pulling out some of the ones I had here to, like, some of the majors I wanted to chit chat about. Let's see. Okay. One thing I really love is the lovers card. Let's get rid of the comment.
It's actually been interesting to see people respond to how they interpret the genders of the lovers.
Yeah. I love that it's like it could be almost anybody. Like I could
that
read
is correct.
Anybody. Right.
That is the one. This is the one card where, like, so I have to say the artist Ella was amazing to work with, and so frequently, like, she got it exactly on the first go. This was a card we went back and forth a few times on because, you know, I was saying I want someone to look at the card and actually it could be any and every gender. So and so we went back and forth on this one, right down to like the eyelashes. Wow. we really went back and forth on this one until I think for this version, she created this version. She showed it to someone else who wasn't at all familiar with the deck and said, "Can you tell me what gender like this person is?" And the person stared at it for about 2 minutes and then said, "I don't know." And I was like, "Good, perfect." Because, you know, gender diversity gender diversity and sexual diversity were so important to me. I mean, in addition to background in this deck. So that was, you know, to me, it was really crucial because it's a lover's card. And so, yeah, that's the card we went back and forth a few times on.
Oh, wow. At least you finally got it.
We did. Yes.
Let's see. Another one I really love is the Hierophant, because it's like, here's all the written histories and knowledge, right? Versus like, I'm saying it because I'm saying it, which I get from a lot of Hierophants. So,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
I do appreciate the heart and throat chakra here.
And you know, this was another card where the Hierophant can be, again, very triggering for a lot of people. And so I wanted to make sure that this card would still get at the idea of deep wisdom and knowledge, and still from the idea that there can be someone who has an authority, but it's earned. It's an earned authority, and it's knowledge based, and it's coming from a solid place. So there can still be the sense of expertise, is I guess what I'm getting at, right? And so the expertise can still exist, and that person can still be teaching others and helping others learn, but it's coming from a place of actual wisdom and expertise, and, you know, and devotion and investment into that.
Well, and my favorite teachers are always the ones that say, "I'm not a teacher, I'm just another student."
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing, right? I think the most effective teachers are the ones who themselves have a growth mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Oh, hi, Tony. That's when that Intuitive Tarot and Julie just popped in. Hi. And anyone I might have missed. Oh, Woolly Hermit. Hi, Mel. Yeah. People keep popping in. So let's see, what's another good one to talk about? Well, okay. Since death is something that we all struggle with, this has got to be one of my favorite death cards. Yeah. I really love this one.
Oh yeah. You know, the way that, you know, death, I mean, first of all, you know, as someone who has mediumship abilities, I know that, you know, that this physical life is not all there is, right? And but it's also the idea of of death and transformation, as in the end of a chapter to the start of a new chapter, right? It is like recreation.
Right.
And in this case, the connection with that transformation and the butterflies, but also, you know, the sacral and the solar plexus chakra, it's almost like it's the coming to life, because this person used to be, you know, a pile of rocks, right? That's why this person is, you know, a little bit see-through in places, because this person is transforming from this pile of rocks into a living, breathing, full of life person, right? Their full selves, but they had to recreate that, you know, in maybe a somewhat cathartic way.
Well, the thing that popped in my head when I saw this was, what's death to the caterpillar is birth to the butterfly. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
One of my favorite cards. And then, of course, you have the follow-up, which is Temperance. I love that card, too.
Yes.
But the one that really kind of jumped out at me as, like, I don't know, pretty profound for me, is the Devil. Because this is not the typical Devil card where it's like this big, horrible creature, like, lording over these minions, right? So this is more about how we see ourselves, which I think was so important for me to see in the Devil card.
And how frequently are we our own worst enemy? Or how often are the voices of other people's mouths in our own minds, right? You know, those stories that we tell ourselves, because we're all telling ourselves stories every day, right? And, you know, where there are repeated stories that we tell ourselves, well, whose voice does it actually sound like? Does it actually sound like yours? Does it maybe sound like someone else's voice from your past, maybe from your family of origin, maybe, you know, somebody else while you were growing up? Does it sound like somebody else? And, you know, are you then reinforcing that and perpetuating that on yourself? Or are you like, whose expectations are you really trying to live up to, right? Who are you giving credence to? And can you just find that space of being comfortable with who you are and who you are creating within yourself in the mirror in front of you?
Yeah, definitely. Because I know for myself, there's been times where that inner critic wasn't really my voice. It was like my high school bully still talking to me. And it just was like, wait, no, he's gone. Why do I still have this voice? So, yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that is what the Devil card is meant to capture.
And that's what it did for me. So,
that's beautiful. Yeah. That's amazing.
And then the follow card, of course, the tower.
Oh, yes.
I love this tower because the lightning bolt turns into a crack that you can see like blue skies through, which is
that's right.
This is one of the first tower cards I actually feel like a hint of hope in.
And that's what the intent is, right? It's not the end. It just feels horrible in the moment. It feels traumatic, but it's not the end. And there is hope that blue sky is just on the other side.
Just got to get through that door. Or let the tower crack.
Uh-oh.
Right? The tower that you think is protecting you.
Connectivity issues again.
But it's really holding you in.
Oh, dear.
Are we breaking up again? Guys, are our sounds okay to you guys?
The issues again.
The issues.
Uh-oh. It's not good. Okay. Okay, we seem to be okay. Knocking on wood. All right, we're back.
We're okay.
Okay.
One card that I was interested to talk to you about is the Star card. Speaking of the tower,
yes,
you so often get like a naked woman, and here she's like completely draped.
Yes, but doesn't she look comfortable, right?
Yes.
Because again, this is meant to be a healing deck, and for some people, they are, lots of people are coming with very real trauma. to this deck. And for some people, it's not freedom or hopeful to see a naked female body. They may actually feel very very triggered and very unsafe, right? And that's not what the Star card is meant to entail at all, right? This is actually a space of you are safe. You are safe. There is hope. And when you are feeling safe, who do you aspire to be? And how do you really want to feel? And you can feel that way. And so that's why she's basically covered in this beautiful like blanket cloak that is just comforting, right? I mean, you could tell she's holding it closed, right? She's not wearing clothes under there, but she gets to feel safe, and someone encountering the card also gets to feel that safety. Yes.
I love how you thought about triggers and how to not have any in the deck, which is
hard. It is hard because, you know, in some ways, you know, anything can trigger people depending on the situation, but, you know, trying to think of things that might be obvious, more obvious triggers for sure, trying to avoid those.
I noticed too that the moon is an actual person versus like the dog and the wolf, right?
Yes.
So what was the thought process behind that?
So again, I wanted to avoid any feeling of because as much as the animals are not actually, I seem to be having connectivity issues again.
When you have a hiccup, just pause for a moment.
I'm going continues to capture. Broken up. Still pausing. Still pausing. Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Almost.
I'm not sure why the internet's having so many issues today.
Better. Nope. Wait.
No. Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, that's so frustrating.
So Mel says
okay, waiting. Hopefully
she also prefers decks without nudity. She's no prude, but nudity defines too much, which I get. I'm still pausing, yeah.
Still bad connection. I'm going to try to change my physical location because that might. The only thing is that I have to. I seem to be back. Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Great.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, I just had to. All right, so. Yes, the moon. So I again wanted to avoid the feeling of anyone feeling like they're being attacked or possibly could be attacked. And the issue with having the animals there, like the two on either side, is someone might feel like I'm going to be attacked. Meanwhile, I think, you know, the moon card also gets a lot of other ideas around uncertainty and the way not necessarily being clear. And it's going to be a bit of catharsis to go through, you know, that kind of the uncertain valley, right? Like there's a very uncertain space that needs to be traveled. And everything may not be really clear or really obvious or as it seems. And yet you can find your way. It might just feel a bit cathartic. And so rather it's the idea of this, you know, self-created flame that someone is creating their own catharsis to get through, knowing through that they'll get through the uncertainty to the other side and find that healing there.
Right. To walk through the flames, basically.
Yes, but it is of their own making too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's cool. Let's see. What other ones do I have? Oh yeah, the chariot. I was gonna ask. Normally you see the chariot still, and here you get like this amazing sense of motion. So
Yes. And, for that, I did want to capture the idea that, your decision's already underway, right?
Mhm.
And whether you make an active decision or you're not making an active decision, your decision is still happening, right? Because not making a decision is actually a decision, right?
Exactly.
You are, things still continue to move forward in one way or another. It might just not actually be what you're really wanting. And so it's a gentle reminder that things are continuing to move forward
Mhm.
and you are directing the way. And so don't you want to, really connect in with your insight, really listen to yourself, right? Because so often are we making decisions based on what we really believe is right, or are we making decisions based on what we should do? I'm regularly reminding people, stop shooting all over yourself, right? Don't shoot on yourself, right? What do you think you should do? What feels right to you? What decision do you want to make? Make that decision, because you're still living with the consequences no matter what you do.
Yeah. hmm Well, and it reminded me of that phrase, life is what happens when you're busy planning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's a time and a place. And of course you want to, you want to be able to plan ahead as well. But regardless of what you do, time still continues on. There was a friend of mine years ago who, said, well, I've been thinking about taking this other career path, but it requires going back to school. I don't know what I should do. And I said, listen, you have to do whatever feels right for you. But all I'll say is this: 4 years is going to pass regardless of what you do with it.
hmm
So whatever you do, just know that the 4 years is going to pass. And so she ended up going back to school, pursued the other thing, and now she's very happy doing that other in that other career. That's a much better fit for what she wants. But it's because she listened to herself and she recognized, okay, yes, actually, no matter what I do with it, 4 years is still 4 years. So,
hmm which makes sense. Total
and I
sense.
mean, thankfully she also, she had access to what was required to invest in the education, thankfully, right? And,
Mhm.
I recognize not everyone has that access.
Right. Speaking of justice,
Yes. Yes.
I love this card so much. I love the fact that she's not blindfolded.
Yeah.
She's a woman of color and she's standing there proud and in her own power, which, wow.
She is totally powerful. And I mean, she's standing there. There's no one who can say that she's standing there not fully in her power, right?
hmm
She is.
Exactly.
And, power is, it's one of those words where it's like the word awesome. Awesome doesn't actually, like, it's not, if for something to be awesome, it means that you are filled with awe.
Aw, right.
And the feeling of awe should be that sense of wonder. It should be overwhelming. You should feel it throughout your whole body. And it's the same thing with personal power and with that kind of grounded, heartfelt power that you have created against all odds. That is
Right.
power. And that
hmm
is awe.
hmm This is awesome. Yeah. Which leads to judgment.
Yes. And
This
so,
one,
yes.
yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this one. First time I saw it, I had a little bit of a disconnect from it, just because it was like trying to read what I normally read into it, but I can't read what I normally read out of judgment out of this card. Like, while it does give me that vibe of rebirth and like putting the crown on your head kind of idea, it's less this like you're dead now you're coming back to life. It's more of like, again, sitting in your seat of power and claiming your power.
And as a question then, do you think he's floating up or down? And which way is the crown going?
Truthfully, I didn't see him going up or down, more that
Oh.
he was there with the crown floating over him and he's here to teach. That's what I got from it.
And he's also pointing in the direction of the future from the perspective of cultures that read left to right. And I will say that I have created the deck in terms of time and whether something is pointing to the past or to the future. I have created this deck from the perspective of cultures that read left to right. And so I do want to be clear about that, because some cultures read right to left, others read top down. And so, but I couldn't do all of those in the deck without being confusing. And given that I knew that the bulk of people who are likely to be using the deck would be cultures who read left to right. And so this person is pointing in the direction of the future, and that sense of yes, being recognized and receiving the recognition. And you know, there's nothing wrong with having the sense of chronology be a question mark. Sometimes it's okay for the question mark to remain there, right? There is a reason that it's not clear, right? The crown is not on his head, right? It's not clear which direction he's going or not going. And it's okay for that question mark to be there, because sometimes it's in that ambiguity. Sometimes it's around the edges that we actually experience the greatest healing and empowerment.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Well, thank you for that. I'm definitely have a better perspective of this card now. So this one I pulled it because someone pointed something out to me, which I didn't even notice the first time I looked at it. But I bet you don't even notice it either. But the pomegranates are placed in kind of an interesting position.
Oh, is that so?
And I assume that's purposeful. Yeah.
You know, I think it's very common for the Empress to be a pregnant woman, and in this case, that there's ambiguity left there, but also the idea of the idea of love. It's not always, because I think a lot of people have come to this card, they're like, oh, why is this not the heart chakra? Oh my goodness, I don't understand. Why is this not the heart chakra? Well, first of all, it's not the heart chakra because that's not where the Empress is on the tree of life as it relates to the chakras, right? And this is a system. I created a system. I didn't just, assign everything willy-nilly. And the other part of that is that a lot of people connect a lot of femininity to the Empress. And when we're thinking about femininity or the feminine, that can look like a lot of things for a lot of people, regardless of your gender, right? And is it less so about the heart-centered, oh, love, because everyone can have that. Everyone has every element has the capacity for all the elements of the genders within them. And instead, do we want to kind of challenge the social mores of feminine just meaning love, and question whether it's also about, the feminine intuition and also the bold communication of that, right? Sharing boldly and courageously what you really see and what your insights are. And can you imagine that if every person who identifies as feminine or has a predilection to femininity within them felt more empowered to share exactly what they see? Can you imagine how different this world would be right now? And so there is that element of it. But like bringing in a little bit of gentle reference to the sexuality without being triggering or in your face.
Right. Love that. Okay. Because I totally thought it was purposeful, but the person I was talking to wasn't sure that it might have just been like an art mistake, and like, not in this deck.
No.
So that's gorgeous. I guess we're almost at the hour, so let's just jump in and talk about the extra card real quick.
Yes.
The shadow. That
Yes.
this has so many layers of shadow in it. It's amazing. Really, it is. Shadows
Yes.
of shadows.
And you know what? It's to get at the idea that, shadow work is complex, and it's rarely ever just the one thing that you think it is. There's usually
Right.
also, like, you can deal with the thing that's right in front of you, but
Mhm.
when you've done, extensive healing work, what you often discover is that the main thing that you think is the main event that you're working with, yes, it's
Right.
there and it's valid, and yes, you need to deal with it, but there's almost always, I can guarantee you, there's an other issue that's looming in the background that needs you to take the space that's right. You need to take the space, deal with the thing that's right in front of you, and
Right.
then you need to gently turn and then deal with the other thing that never had a voice, because you just had to deal with this other element that really needed healed first. But it is a reminder that, shadow work, it's not just, you're not just ever dealing with the one thing, right? There's layers, there's
Mhm.
lots of layers. And that's why sometimes when people are doing healing work, sometimes they get a bit frustrated because they're like, oh, like, how many layers are there? Like, I thought I just dealt with a thing. That's great. Yes, you did do real work and you dealt with a thing, but they're
Mhm.
often connected to other issues. And,
Right.
we're so complex as people. And so it's natural and it's okay that there's other things to still be dealt with after.
Mhm. Well, and it's part of life, right? The shadow never really goes away, no matter how many times we deal with it.
No. And you know what? That's okay. It's okay that there's always, more that can be healed, and the more that we can empower ourselves, right? That's okay.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and it brings to mind a phrase I heard, actually, shared on Facebook, is that why be the sun in someone's day if you can be the moon in someone's night?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Exactly. I think that's beautiful. And again, that card does have some of those elements coming into it as well, right? The light's coming from somewhere.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, so, what do you have lined up for the future? Are you gonna do more? You gonna do more decks?
People keep asking me that. I've had a bunch of people asking if I'm going to make an oracle, if I'm going to make another tarot. I've got lots of ideas in my head.
Mhm.
Still working with the current deck, of course, but I've got
Right.
lots of ideas flying around in my head. So everyone should stay tuned, of course. And yes, at this point, I'm just still catching my breath from
Mhm.
this current deck, because oh my goodness, bringing a deck into the world is a very significant feat. But a lot of people have been
Right.
asking about an oracle in particular, and a few people have started to ask about another tarot deck. So lots of ideas,
Lots of ideas. Good.
lots of ideas.
Um, so I kind of wanted to stick with the theme this month. So last week I talked about the five elements. Today we're talking about the chakras, right? Next week I'm going to have Darshani Shuka come and talk about her lovely own tarot.
Oh,
So,
beautiful.
so I'm trying to really focus this month on like personal spiritual growth kind of
Mhm.
decks, because I mean your deck is made for healing. This one's made specifically for personal and spiritual growth.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, that's kind of what I touched on with the five elements, because we all have all five, but there's one in particular, and how to balance all five of them in
Yeah,
your own system.
beautiful.
Um, so yeah, join me next week with the lovely Darshani, and I want to thank you, Malumir, for being here. This has been amazing, and one of the reasons I love doing these is because talking to the creator, it really helps me understand the deck way better than if I just like sat there and tried to figure it out on my own. Being able to pick your brain has been amazing. So thank you for that. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's always so much fun to come in here and chat with folks.
Oh, thank you again. And we're getting lots of thanks. Lots of thanks and hearts. It's interesting to hear more about the cards in depth. Lots of thank yous, and thanks everyone for coming. Until next time, aloha and a hui hou. I never know where my hand's supposed to go.